Make sure you guys stick around for the full video. We got a lot to go through, and of course, we're going to be behind the computer today. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? John Claymore here, and as I said before, we are going to be doing more videos like this behind the computer with the actual microphone, and we're talking about white replacement theory versus black replacement theory and why it is that it's more than likely black replacement theory. Now, guys, this topic right here became a little bit more mainstream, as I will show you here in a second, sometime after 2020. The reason why was because of the border surge. However, what a lot of people don't understand is that this topic has actually been in the news for a long time. You see, during the Obama administration's second term, shortly before the 2016 presidential election, immigration was a pretty hot topic. Well, the reason why is because a lot of immigrants were coming in at that time, some of which were coming from South America, Mexico. There were a lot believed to have came from possibly the Middle East, which is its own little rabbit hole on its own, which we'll probably discuss at a later date, especially as we talk about the border more and more. Well, Tucker Carlson brought it up shortly after Joe Biden took over in office, and we'll be showing you some of that here in a second. But the thing is this right here. This issue has actually been going on for a while, and many people believe that these immigrants coming over may be designed to replace whites, but if you actually look into the data a little bit further, you see that it's not really whites that are being replaced, but possibly African Americans, Black Americans are the ones that are actually being replaced. This right here was brought up, I think, in Dinesh D'Souza's Death of a Nation or Trump Card documentary, either one of those two there. I think I'll try to find a link to both, or at least a link where it's actually explained. I'll throw it in the comment section of this video here. Now, guys, before we get started, make sure you guys go ahead and hit that like button. If you're new to this channel, make sure you guys hit the subscribe button. Let's go ahead and try to get monetized here in 2023. Also, hit the notifications bell. Only about 22 or 23% of you guys that watch the content are subscribed, so make sure you guys hit the subscribe button. Make sure you guys share the video, and the main topic of discussion in this particular video is not only the border, but we're going to be taking a lot of time looking at the abortion rates, and we're also going to be looking at the the birth and death rates. This is going to be part one of a many-part series. It's probably going to be about 3 or 4 parts total. The second part, we're going to focus in on crime, and the third part, we're going to focus in on disease, kind of bringing it back home here to part one. And with that there being said, let's go ahead and get into it.
One study 20 years ago funded by the University of California. That surveyed a total of 829 people born in Mexico and living in Los Angeles, and it asked them whether they responded to census interviews. Now, the majority of them said yes, but here's the amazing thing. Nearly 40% of those households refused to answer the survey at all. In other words, all the assumptions that there are 11 million illegal immigrants in this country are based on a separate assumption, and it's that 90% of illegal immigrants are willing to cooperate with the Census Bureau. And that assumption itself is based on a survey showing nearly half of all illegal immigrants refuse to fill out the survey. This is bad math at the very least. In 2018, researchers at Yale and MIT decided to update the methodology. Yeah, not a minute too soon. They did not rely on census data. Instead, they used, quote, operational data, such as deportations, visa overstays, demographic data, death rates, immigration rates, etc. Those are real numbers. They combined them and used a mathematical model to establish a range of estimates, how many people live here illegally. Here's what they found, quote, after running 1 million simulations of the model, the researchers' 95% probability range is 16 million to 29 million illegal aliens, with 22.1 million as the mean. In other words, the estimates that we've been relying on for decades and repeating to each other like they're real, the estimates the Biden administration is now using to justify mass amnesty, could possibly, in fact, may likely be off by more than 18 million people. There could easily be 30 million illegal immigrants living in this country or more. How many people is that? That's more people than... Our research has identified significant evidence that the census estimates of undocumented immigrants may be capturing as little as half of the total undocumented population. This gross undercounting is a serious accounting issue, which could ultimately lead to government policy errors in the future. Oh, you think? Like giving amnesty to 11 million who are actually 30 million? Yeah, that could be an error. Now, to make this calculation, Bear Stearns did not rely on census data because they're a bank. They're not as dumb as our government. Instead, they looked at bank transfers, remittances from the U.S. to Mexico. They wanted to capture the number of payments from illegal aliens living here to their families back home. And here's what they found. Quote, the rate of increase in remittances far exceeds the increases in Mexicans residing in the U.S. and their wage growth. Between 1995 and 2003, the official tally of Mexicans has climbed 56%, and median weekly wage income has increased by 10%. Yet total remittances jumped.
I will be leaving that full segment in the description box, and I'm going to try to leave a couple more videos from another content creator who talks about this issue at large. I'm going to try to leave those in the comments section as well. Now, guys, let me go ahead and say this. With everything that goes on, it's all about politics. Okay, it's all about gaining the system. Now, let me go ahead and say this first before we get to the topic of abortion, because I want to go ahead and get the political aspect of this out of the way now. It is true that the Democrats are trying to replace blacks with Hispanic votes. However, this plan could be backfiring as you look at some of the exit data from the 2022 midterms. Republicans have been gaining with Hispanics. Now, how in the world do you think they are gaining? How is it that they are gaining with Hispanics and Democrats are losing Hispanic support? You could say wokeness, okay? That right there's probably the number one thing. Immigration is another issue. The main reason why Democrats are actually losing support amongst Hispanics is all of the talk from the Republican side railing against socialism. You see, once socialism came into the mainstream, Hispanics, especially those coming from Mexico, those who, quite frankly, had descendants from Cuba or Puerto Rico or the Dominican Republic or South America, where a lot of these nations have socialistic governments, they immediately got turned off by the aspect of socialism at large. Democrats have also lost ground with African American voters and probably will continue to lose, so of course in smaller bites. This whole thing revolves around politics, and the Democratic Party right now is trying to sacrifice one race to appease another because that is their brand new voter base. I just wanted to go ahead and get that aspect out of the way. Good portion of what Tucker said I agree with, and like I said before at the beginning of this video, this issue's actually been going on for a while. The idea, of course, is to try to make the country more diverse, or that is what's actually being said, and as a result of this, the mainstream media, especially the liberal media, likes to run on this and say, okay, here you see these white people being completely racist. Well, I don't know about that, but what I would say, and don't worry, I'm pretty sure that somebody's going to come into the comment section and scream that I'm a racist for even bringing this up, when in reality this issue actually affects black people a lot more than it does white people, as I will show you here in a second when we look at the actual racial demographics of the country, and then we discuss the birth, death, and abortion rates in the nation, and who this right is actually designed to affect. And in this series, you'll see exactly what I mean when I say that, black people are going to be most affected by this, especially when it comes to the border. And of course, there's also going to be an economical element to go along with this, which also happens to interweave with crime, and it also happens to interweave with, guess what? Overall health, birth, and death rates. Now, with that right there being said, guys, let's go ahead and look at the racial demographics of the country. A simple Google search can kind of help determine a lot of life's actual answers. A lot of times people throw up a lot of statistics out there, and they just say it without actually providing any evidence. Now, this right here is just a good old-fashioned Google page. Now, I don't know if I told you guys at the beginning of this, but we're going to be checking this out in real time. Now, obviously, I've looked at some of this, and I'm going to be providing a lot more documentation than just the actual links that I click on. Now, the census, the U.S. Census, is actually the best resource where you can go to, but the most cited is obviously going to be Wikipedia. Now, Wikipedia, on the other hand, let's just say that Wikipedia sometimes does have a bit of a bias because people can come in and actually edit the page. Now, pay very, very close attention to this because this number here is going to change. Now, the other day I saw a figure. Now, pay very, very close to this right here, 12.4% black, okay? The other day I saw a figure that said 11.6%, and I also saw a figure that said 13%, and I also saw another figure that said right around 12.6%. That's four separate figures. I'm going to play it safe here and go with the 12.6 as my personal opinion before we actually look at the actual data. Whites, I saw a number saying 66. I also saw a number saying 60. I also saw a number saying 63, and of course I saw 57.8. However, the Hispanic number has been relatively consistent, at least in the last few articles and the last few studies that I've actually seen. At one point in time, it was 13% of the population was black and 12% of the population was Hispanic. But of course, every 10 years, they redo the census. This is also done to update the Electoral College, which, by the way, did update in 2020. We may even do some election projects at a later date this year. I'm also smoking right now. I know I told you guys I'd quit, but just know that I've cut down drastically. But the thing is this right here. One of the main reasons why we focus in on the abortion death rates is because of this number here, 12.4% of the population. You see, it is my personal opinion that if anybody is getting replaced, it's more than likely African Americans that are being replaced. Whites at one point in time could identify as Hispanics, or Hispanics did identify as white at one point in time, as I will show you here shortly. One of these groups, of course, is the Tejanos in Texas. We will be discussing that at a later date, probably another project, especially when we talk about stuff like CRT and things of that nature there. Now, this right here is just a good old-fashioned demographics of this is just a good old-fashioned Wikipedia page. Now, I want to focus in right here. Okay, and like I said, I'll leave the entire article for you guys to actually look at. U.S. population, 333 million at this moment in time, 287,557. Okay, birth rate, 11 births per 1,000. Don't worry, we'll talk about birth rate here soon. Deaths, 10.4 deaths per 1,000. Obviously, we're not having too many more babies than we are actually dying. This is a bit of a problem. Now, you guys know my stances on abortion. You guys know I'm a pro-lifer. And, of course, some left-winger is going to come in here and say, well, you just gave up your bias. Maybe you should watch the whole frickin' video first before you make that assumption. Well, let's go ahead and look at this. As of 2020, white people, including Hispanic whites, of course, are Hispanics that identify as white, numbered at 204,227,273 people. That right there, of course, is 61.6% of the population. That's probably the original study that I saw. And non-Latino whites make up 57.8%. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I am a non-Latino white. My family has heritage that stems from Ireland, England, and Scotland. My mother's side of the family is mostly Scottish. My father's side of the family is mostly English with a little bit of Irish. And they even found a little bit of Russian. So go right ahead and say what the hell you want in the comment section. That right there was according to my Ancestry.com stuff, which my sister did a few years ago. Now, Latino Americans accounted for 51.1% of the total national population growth between 2010 and 2020. Now, this right here is where a lot of people believe that this is people coming across the border, and let me explain the reason why, and I'll show you again in the very, very next section. Birth rates in the country are actually down, but they're actually down the most amongst Hispanic women. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, doesn't that kind of sort of contradict what you're saying or the videos you've done on black abortion? By the way, this video right here will be left in the description box as well. This was initially Tucker Carlson's interview with Kanye West. I'll probably try to leave it as an end card in this video too. One of the many changes we're doing on this channel. You're probably thinking that it kind of sort of contradicts things. Well, if that right there is the case, then wouldn't it actually prove what we've been saying about the border and that they're trying to actually replace people? I mean, just think about it for a second. Now, increasing from 50.5 million in 2010 to 62.1 million in 2020. The Hispanic or Latino population increased by 23% between 2010 and 2020, an increase of more than 11.6 million immigrants, and their U.S.-born descendants are expected to provide most of the U.S. population gains in the decades ahead. Now, as I said before, the overall Hispanic population birth rate is down. So that kind of sort of makes you wonder, why are they continuing to bring more and more people across that border? Now, Biden visited the border the other day. He visited El Paso. He didn't actually see the full border, and apparently things were cleaned up. But we've been looking at stuff like this right here for the past 2 years, ever since he got in office. I mean, I don't know if you guys noticed or not, but there was another border surge back in 2018. We've had to go through the whole Title 12, Title 40 stuff like crazy. We've had to go through this nonsense where a ridiculous rate Supreme Court's had to step in. Right now, we have an absolute border crisis. Now, there is an economical element, but we're going to save that right there for another video. Now, with that right there being said, let's take a good look at the abortion rate, guys. Here's an article from the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commissions. This is of the Southern Baptist Convention, so somebody's probably going to already say that this right here is somewhat biased, but as you guys will see, this was actual statistics that have been taken over time, and of course this article came in May the 6th, 2002. Now, let's go ahead and read the initial section of this right here. Which women in America got an abortion? The answer is more complicated than is often portrayed in the media or in online discussions. The women are indeed likely to be low income, but are most likely to be educated. Wow. Low income. Who does that actually suit? That suits poor whites, and it also suits, guess who? Blacks who live in poverty, but are likely to be educated. Who does that suit? That right there looks like it suits college, mostly college white girls, all right? They are unmarried, but are also mothers. Sometimes kids, sometimes women will have one or two kids, sometimes by multiple daddies. It's just a fact of life. They may have a child with one person and they have an unexpected pregnancy and then turn right back around at a later date and then have an abortion. Now, guys, I'm not doing this video without any type of compassion. Ladies, if you think I'm wrong, please say so in the comment section. They are also likely to have already had an abortion and to self-identify as Christian. Now, people identifying as Christian, I'm going to go ahead and say this right here, and this right here may be a little bit anecdotal, but I'm just going to give you my personal opinion. I am a Christian, and I am not a very good Christian. I try to live right, but I still smoke from time to time. I still drink from time to time. I still go to the bar. As I've said before, I'm not passing judgment on anybody. There are people out there, however, that claim to be a Christian, but they never go to church or anything. This right here could also be a little bit in this actual, how do I say, this right here could also play into it as well. As the end of Roe looks to be near and the pro-life cause is moving into a new phase, Christians need to be more prepared to argue and serve based on the facts and shifting demographic realities. Here are some of the statistics that will help you gain a better understanding of the women in America who choose to have an abortion. Now, guys, the very next article we're going to look at is actually two, one from Statista, and we're going to be looking at another one, which I found very odd. I think it came from KFF, that in which you try to find the information of abortion per state. It's very weird because states like New York and California, for whatever reason, they do not keep an actual log of African Americans having abortions. Now, let's just go ahead and we'll get to that here in a second. I just figured I'd throw that out there. The majority of abortions are for women in their 20s. Women in their 20s accounted for more than half the abortions, 56.9%, according to a report from the Centers for Disease Control in 2019. I will leave that article, by the way, in the description box. Of course, we're waiting for updated numbers. Last year, the data was actually available. Women aged 20 to 24, most of these ladies right here, of course, are what? College, or mostly college age, correct? Or those coming into the work world, 25 to 29. These right here are women who are obviously, for the most part, single, probably in relationships, or they could be a little bit wild, mostly in cities, which is another reason why I want to bring up the blue state argument here soon, too. Accounted for the highest percentages of abortions, 27.6% and 29.3% respectively, and had the highest abortions rates at 19 and 18.6 abortions per 1,000 women aged 20 to 24 and 25 to 29 years respectively. Now, that's kind of weird. There's not that much difference in the actual overall abortions per 1,000 women in the age group. I think this right here, of course, has obviously got to do with culture. By contrast, adolescents age, now my math is a little bit bad, but I'll just narrow it down this right here. The number is obviously pretty bad. You guys can read it, of course, yourself, and you guys can think what you kind of sort of want to think about it. Fact of the matter is the abortion rate is obviously pretty high. We're also having a lot more promiscuous sex, and we're also seeing younger women getting pregnant at a much, much higher rate and then losing their children later on as a result of abortion, which, by the way, is their choice to do so. Now, guys, I have made my personal thoughts on abortion loud and clear in other videos. I am not in favor of abortion. I understand it in the case of the life of the mother. I understand the cases of rape and incest. However, I would like to see abortion for the most part go away, but I do understand that it is, I guess, a necessary evil in certain circumstances and certain situations. Fact of the matter is, it's a practice that, quite frankly, is pretty evil, and I feel that America is going to experience some type of judgment in the near future over it, or we may have already started to. Now, here we go. Women of color have the most abortions. Among the 30 areas that reported race by ethnicity data for 2019, non-Hispanic white women and non-Hispanic black women accounted for the most percentages of all abortions, 33.4% and 38.4% respectively, and Hispanic women and non-Hispanic women in the other race category accounted for smaller percentages, 21 and 7.2% respectively. So Hispanic women and non-Hispanic women. Now, non-Hispanic women could mean Arab women. It could mean Asian women. It could mean Indian women. All right? It could mean that right there. Now, Hispanic women, as I mentioned earlier, the Hispanic birth rate is actually pretty low, and we'll show you that here in a second. That percentage being as low as it is does tell me that even though the birth rate is not high, it means that when Hispanic women get pregnant, they typically are more inclined to keep the child, where white women, especially college-age women and young women in their 20s, fall into a situation where they just don't want to take care of the child. I understand rape and incest is a possibility. I understand that, and I'm not frowning on anybody who was ever raped. Trust me, I'm not going to do that. I think rape is extremely evil and, quite frankly, should not occur. Black women, on the other hand, I think are having abortions mostly due to income at the time, and they're doing this because a lot of times, and let's be honest, there's a lot of single mothers in the African-American community. Now, as I said before, I'm not here to pass judgment or anything. I'm here to say that I think we can do a lot better. And, of course, as I mentioned before, I think that black people are the ones who are actually being replaced in society, not really white people. But we'll get on that right there further in the series. Non-Hispanic white women had the lowest abortion rate. That means that white women overall had the lowest abortion rate. The non-Hispanic ones, not the ones who identify as Hispanic. 6.6 abortions per 1,000 women, and ratio 117 abortions per 1,000 live births. And non-Hispanic black women had the highest abortion rate of 23.8% per 1,000, 23.8 abortions per 1,000 women, a ratio of 386 abortions per 1,000 live births. Fact of the matter is, at this moment in time, it looks like the next batch of black youth is being replaced by border Hispanics. By the way, I'm not saying this be anti-Hispanic. I actually compliment Hispanics on keeping their children. I compliment Hispanics on being very, very family-oriented, and quite frankly, I'm around both blacks and Hispanics all the time, and it's not like they don't know my views. Of course, we've had political banter back and forth. But fact of the matter is this right here. It is African-American black women who are aborting their kids at a record rate. This right here will also be a trend when it comes to crime, especially violent crime. Now, with that right there being said, let me show you guys this next little article that I came across, which I think is a little bit baffling. Second. All right, guys, KFF, and don't worry, I will be leaving this article in the description box. Now, I want you guys to pay very, very close attention to this. Reported legal abortions by race of women who obtained abortion by the state of occurrence. Now, it could be over any particular circumstance. The time frame is obviously 2020. This right here is obviously a list of the states itself. Now, it goes all the way down from Alaska all the way down to Wyoming. Now, I want you guys to think about this. Now, I have not clicked on anything. Okay, percent. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to change it to number. And we're going to change it to white. Alabama, 1,485. Now, I'm not going to go through every single state, but I want you guys to pay very, very close attention to this. California, no record. Colorado, no record. Blue state. Delaware has a record, 858. Blue state. District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. Blue state, 651. Hawaii, blue record. Blue state, no record. Illinois, blue state, no record. Iowa. Iowa's a red state, but for whatever reason, it does not have a record. I'm not really sure about that and why that's the case. Louisiana is a red state, no record. Maine, blue state, no record. Maryland, blue state, no record. Massachusetts, blue state, no record. Now, guys, you obviously notice that there's obviously a couple of red areas here. However, Louisiana has always had a Democrat governor. Now, I'm not saying that that right there is the reason why this data is not available. I'm just throwing it out there. You could probably argue Iowa has a Republican governor, which they do in Kim Reynolds, but at the same time, though, once again, there's no record. I cannot figure out why, but don't worry, I'll probably feed this into the next project. Nebraska, no record. That's a red state. New Hampshire, it's a blue state, no record. New Jersey, blue state, no record. New Mexico is a blue state, but it does have a record. New York is a blue state, no record. North Dakota is a red state, no record. Same thing with Ohio, and same thing with Oklahoma. You see, I think this data needs to be made available for all states, also including Pennsylvania, purple one, Rhode Island, blue. Tennessee is a red state. As you guys can see, it must be state to state. Washington state, of course, no record. It's a blue state. Wisconsin, no record. Some of these areas right here, quite frankly, some of the bluest areas in the country, and we're not getting any record, and we're not getting any types of record at all. Now, I do wonder if Pennsylvania, if maybe it's possible that because it's Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, we're not getting any type of any type of actual data. By the way, we're looking at white, and we're going to switch over to black here in a second, and Hispanic. The thing is this right here. I'm just curious. Washington State, Seattle would be where the largest population of African Americans would be at. Wisconsin, Milwaukee, correct? Rhode Island, Providence. Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. Oklahoma, probably Tulsa or Oklahoma City. Ohio, you have Cleveland. You have Cincinnati. I'm just throwing it out there because maybe it's a city thing. I'm not too sure, but we'll see. Let's take a look at black really quick. Now, here's where it gets trickier. Once again, California, same thing. Alabama, 3,769 black babies were aborted. You see, you are aborting the future. You are killing off your future. And you'll see it in the death rate, why this right here matters, because a lot of African American males and a lot of African American women are dying. But very, very strangely, a lot of the elderly African Americans are living. Now, guys, this right here sets off alarm bells because you would have children between the ages of 20 and 40. Now, if you're a man, you can obviously have children even into your 70s if you want to, but women typically don't tend to want to bear children after the age of 40. Hawaii, once again. Now, Hawaii's got a very, very low black population, so you're probably not going to see this. District of Columbia, that number right there, hey, that's actually quite low compared to what I was thinking it was going to be, and they obviously do have record. But once again, Colorado, blue state, nobody saying anything. California, blue state, nobody saying anything. Delaware, eighth largest black population in the country, yet for whatever reason, its abortion number is extremely high, almost on par with Alabama. Same thing for Louisiana, same thing for Maine, same thing for Maryland, same thing for Massachusetts. Michigan, wow, that right there is an extremely high number inside Detroit, 15,470 versus 10,498. Sad. Once again, Nebraska, no record. Mississippi, 2,749. Minnesota, mostly white state. Most African Americans, of course, live in the city of Minneapolis. Once again, that's an extremely high number. North Carolina, my home state, holy crap. Wow, we are headed for some type of judgment, I swear. I mean, I can't help but laugh. I can't help but laugh out of insecurity because this is sad. 14,738. Michigan, 15,407. Let me take a look at California one more time. No record once again. Now let's take a look at Hispanic. Wow. Florida, 20,000. I'm sorry, it just popped out right away. Arizona, high Hispanic population, definitely a lot more Hispanics than blacks. 5374. And it's funny, too, because I had just said that Hispanics don't abort their kids at the same rate. Once again, Arkansas, California. It makes you wonder. It just makes you wonder. Once again, you got a lot of states here with no record. Michigan, 1,028, 616. Basically, what I'm saying to you is that this rate right here, for to be only 12.4% of the population, this right here is extremely sad that we're killing off a brand new generation of people. Now, guys, there's something I wanted to show you. It was an article from the Marshall Project. I don't keep up with the Marshall Project. And this is obviously some of the things that I have been searching. But it's an article that I will be providing. And I will be providing it in the description box. This right here is also another good article here from KFF. This right here is an article in which the topic of youth is discussed. The mortality gap. 1 in 5 African American deaths occur earlier than if they were white. Black doctors say the Flex report holds clues to the health system's role in racial health disparities. This right here is a graph, and you'll see this right here. If black Americans died at the same rate as white Americans in 2019, 294,000 black Americans would have died. Obviously, each dot represents people. When you look at exactly how things are arranged by age, it looks like the state of Virginia. Now, here's what's weird. But due to racial disparities in mortality, black Americans die younger at almost every age. Here are the actual deaths in 2019. 72,000 more black Americans died at younger ages. Here's the contrast. Once they reached their mid-80s, black people began to have lower death rates than whites, with 11,000 fewer fewer black deaths in 2019. So older blacks are surviving and younger blacks are dying. It's mostly younger black males, by the way, who are dying. Dying due to crime, dying due to poverty, dying due to all kinds of reasons. And don't worry, we'll talk about obesity and stuff like that right here probably in part 3. Fact of the matter is that black people are dying at an extremely high rate. And the abortion rate is so extremely high that you're not exactly keeping up with population growth. It's part of the reason why the percentage has shrunk. You see, white people right now have a much, much larger percentage, but they're not aborting their kids at this moment in time, and they're also not killing one another off in record numbers. So white people, whether they know it or not, even though the white replacement theory argument for the most part I agree with, white people can sustain an onslaught coming in. Black people cannot, especially black people here in America. And I want you guys to ask yourself a question. Why is it that they never report the murder rates in Chicago? They never report the murder rates in Philadelphia or New York. These are some of the areas of the country where black people live in where most black communities are. Outside the Southeast, of course. But you guys got to ask yourself a question. Are you sure that it's not black people that are not being replaced? Guys, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys one more thing. And it's about the... guys, all you got to do is just simply type in U.S. birth rates by race. And, of course, there are many. And, I mean, there are many articles that discuss this. And we're going to try to find the one that I was looking at earlier. I'm doing a lot of this on the fly, of course. Of all live births in the United States during 2018 to 2020, 23.7% were Hispanics. 52.1% were white. 15.2% were black, 0.8% were American Indian, Alaska, Native. You guys are seeing this here. I am not entirely sure. Wait, it may have been this one right here. It wasn't March of Dimes. But as you guys can see, obviously white people are pumping out kids at a much, much higher rate. I mean, it is the largest race. Somebody is going to come in here and say it's got to do with the population agenda. Now, I typically tend to stay away from those topics because YouTube finds a way to demonetize and deplatform those videos. However, Econo Fact, and don't worry, I'll be providing a lot more information in the description box, had an article out, The Mystery of the Declining U.S. Birth Rate. Now, here's the issue. Of course, we go back all the way to the Great Recession. The Great Recession itself is its own topic. The U.S. birth rate has fallen by 20% ever since that time frame. Of course, the Great Recession started in 2007, and of course, there was a massive economic crash that occurred in 2008, which resulted in TARP and all that nonsense, which stagnated our economy in the Obama years, which took a sudden boom in the Trump years, and then all of a sudden we had the pandemic and everything just gets way worse. Up until the Great Recession, the number of babies born per woman in the United States had been quite stable for the previous 3 decades. The birth rate fluctuated within a relatively narrow range, often along with economic conditions, with fewer babies born during lean times and with births recovering when economic growth was stronger. However, the U.S. birth rate has fallen precipitously since 2007, the Great Recession, with no signs of reversing. The decline cannot be explained by demographic, economic, or policy changes. It is reflective of lower childbearing rates across successive cohorts. Now, if you figure the lower birth rates and higher abortion rates, and of course during the Obama years it seemed like access to abortion just freaking exploded, this right here is obviously going to be a bit of an issue, and it's going to stymie population growth. Great Recession disrupted a stable period in birth rates for the almost 3 decades between 1980 and 2007. The U.S. birth rate hovered between 65 and 70 births per 1,000 women between the ages of 15 and 44. The birth rate followed a predictable, procyclical, I can't really pronounce that one, pattern, failing during economic downturns, recovery during economy improves, but something changed around the time of the Great Recession. The birth rate fell precipitously, there's that word again, and it did not recover when the economy improved. Rather, the U.S. birth rate continued a steady descent. As of 2020, the U.S. birth rate was U.S. birth rate was 55.8 births per 1,000 women between the ages of 15 and 44, a decline of almost 20%, when the rate is 69.3 in 2007. And of course, the rest of this article right here explains the main reasons why. This right here is the one thing right here. Births have fallen among white women, black women, Hispanic women, with the largest declines being amongst Hispanic women. Which, by the way, kind of contradicts what I said earlier about Hispanic women keeping their babies. You guys saw this entire deal. So is it possible that people are being brought across this border to replace white people, or is it being done to replace black people? I think it's being done to replace black people. You see, a lot of black people live in these major inner cities, okay? And a lot of these inner cities have got Democrat mayors, Democrat leadership, which, by the way, increases its access to abortion. In some cases, all the way to birth, which is practically infanticide. Fact of the matter is that we're looking at something in actual live time. And I even got a couple of things wrong myself, but you guys, I'm pretty sure most of you guys are following along. Fact of the matter is that this right here alone is evidence that it is not white people that the Hispanics are replacing, but black people. Guys, there will be more projects on this. The second project is probably going to focus on crime. The third project about this is going to focus on diet and obesity rates. The fourth project is probably going to be something to tie it all together, including the economical conditions. But as you guys can see, I'm laying out some evidence, and I'm giving you guys some stuff to kind of back this up, that obviously what is going on right now in this country is not white replacement theory. It looks a little bit more like black replacement theory. Let me ask you guys a question. At the rate we are going, what do you think the black population percentage is going to be come 2030? I already told you guys, you had figures at 13%. You had figures at not only 13%, but you had figures at 12.6, 12.4, and even one at 11.6 and another one at 11.8. 10 years from now, the rate of everything is going, especially economic conditions and the crime, and don't worry, we're going to be having more projects on that. It makes me almost wonder if by the time we reach 2030, if the black population doesn't shrink from 12.6% all the way down to 10.8. Where are we at in 2040? Probably below 10%. Fact of the matter is that they are systematically going out of their way to eliminate an entire race of people. And sadly, black people who vote Democrat at an extremely high rate are falling for it. And of course, some are starting to wake up, and we'll be doing some projects on that there in the future. Guys, with that right there being said, John Claymore here. I know this was a pretty long, lengthy video. If you guys like this content, hit the like button, subscribe, share the video. If you want to leave a comment, make sure you guys do so. I'd like to hear what you guys have got to say. Also, hit that notifications bell if you're not already subscribed. I'm going to go ahead and pull on out, and I'll try to have the next project like this right here out probably next week, probably on Tuesday, or I may wait till next Friday to follow back up on this topic. There are other projects that I want to do, one of which, of course, is on the Second Amendment, and other one's on how the media manipulates. Expect some more projects in the future, and probably expect a second video to go along with this tomorrow. Guys, I will see you guys later. Peace out.